81-year-old retiree Chuck Dahm has lived in Chicago's Pilsen neighborhood more than 30 years, near a huge mural that features his likeness. He's Father Dahm in this neighborhood because he used to lead this parish. Dahm may be retired, but don't think for a second he's been put out to pasture.
I'm the director of domestic violence outreach for the Archdiocese of Chicago, and I've been to over 130 parishes preaching about this.
Because he works 50 hours a week, unpaid, heading up domestic violence outreach for the Chicago Archdiocese.
I retired from being pastor in 2007, and I started going out to other parishes and preaching and forming ministries.
Ministering across an enormous metropolis of 1,400 square miles with 2.2 million Catholics, over a third of the total population of Cook and Lake counties.
That's my topic this evening, domestic violence. And it's a tough topic.
And opening the lid on a rough subject that he says has been handled all wrong.
No one is expected to stay in an abusive marriage. That's the position of the Catholic Church. Unfortunately, our church has been a little complicit in this because we've not said very much about it. I'm referring to us priests.
There's still priests who tell victims that they have to go back. These would be priests who think, first of all, they don't know anything about the pastoral letter that the bishops have written in which they say no one is expected to stay in an abusive marriage. Domestic violence is all about power and control, controlling the other person, not just disagreeing with the other person, but controlling them. So, what do they wear, where they're going, who are their friends, etc.
I think we all know what physical abuse is, no? Punching someone, slapping them, kicking them, pushing them, throwing things. Verbal or emotional abuse is the most common form, but it's the most difficult to detect.
Why is a man abusive? I mean, you can define the characteristics of an abusive man. One is he has a low appreciation for women. Two, he has low self-esteem. He has a need to be in charge and have power, over something. And he feels entitled because he's a man, he's the husband. If you sit in a church on Sunday, or you preach at your church on Sunday, and let's say you have 300 people there, and let's say 125 of them are women, what percentage of those are victims of domestic violence?
What percentage is it?
A quarter to a third have had some experience with domestic violence. They're right there, right in front of you.
I heard this man, Father Dahm, preach. And I sat there in the back of this congregation of a church I didn't belong to. And I heard this man I had not met yet telling my life story to everyone there in the congregation. Now, he was speaking on domestic abuse and what it is and all the layers. He did focus on the victims and what we need to do. Between the Pope and my two new priests that I met, and Father Dahm, I had the validation, I had the reassurance. Jesus is in the boat. We're going through the storm. Sometimes the waves are raging. One of the first questions people ask me is, why didn't you just leave? Well, it's not that easy. And each victim has their own story and their own reason. But we do have similar struggles. One, my children. I thought I was doing the right thing by trying to keep a typical American family together.
She says her marriage vow kept her trapped with her now ex-husband.
He knew I would not turn my sacrament into something disrespectful. He knew I stayed because I promised God I would stay.
These days, she's divorced, belongs to a different parish with a priest who buys into the Chicago Archdiocese anti-violence, pro-victim position.
Warm welcome to all of you, especially our visitors who are from out of town. We're so very pleased to have representatives from almost 100 parishes throughout the Archdiocese who work in a very diligent way to combat domestic violence.
It's now our job to help the victims feel empowered again and be a full part of our church.
She credits Chuck Dahm for the wholesale changes across the Archdiocese.
It's not just Catholic priests. It's Protestant pastors, it's rabbis, it's, imams in mosques. It's across the board, and it's across the board in ethnicity. The resistance of clergy is universal. This is a woman who was a wonderful woman in our church who was stabbed to death by her husband right here on 19th Street.
Oh, close by.
She was just the loveliest person.
Does that inspire your work, looking at that picture?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know. I kind of figured she was a victim. Her husband was very quiet, soft-spoken. He always came to church by himself, sat by himself. He always came. Every Sunday he was here. And then one night he got mad at her and he killed her.
I bet some people don't like you for what you do, but some of the traditionalists, right?
Well, there are some
people who don't like change.
Yeah, well, in this parish, when I was promoting a lot, women, there were men who did not like that. Yeah.
Did they tell you that?
No.
You could just tell.
No, well, I heard from other people. I got the reputation, he's the priest who defends women. So
I bet that was sort of a badge of honor for you.
Yeah, it was. I thought, well, thank you very much. Exactly. It wasn't a problem for me.
When you spoke on Saturday, you were hitting right between the eyes. You weren't vague. You weren't general.
Yeah. If you do this week after week and you stand in the entrance of the church to say goodbye to people and they can thank you so much, and you have victims come up and survivors, you describe my life. Thanks so much for doing this. I went through exactly what you're talking about. I got out of it, thanks be to God.
I felt like I was sitting there to a man who never met me before, but he was preaching my life story to the congregation at the church that day.
Julie Peterson, Chicago.